Animals eat when they are hungry. Humans kill for pleasure. But again, the animals are the beast. I can't quite get to that idea.
The Afropreneur Podcast, a podcast for African entrepreneurs, presents inspiring, innovative, and disruptive entrepreneurs from Africa as they share their lessons, insights, and learnings from their unique entrepreneurial ventures. I'll be your host. My name is Ogweno Stephen. Let's roll. Welcome to the first part of this mini-sode. It's going to be a series of short podcast series talking about African history, civilizations, and culture on different subcontexts. And this is a series we wanted to do for a very long time, and especially myself, having met Herman a few years ago, and finally met someone who actually was in touch with their African history to really exploit a little bit of the conversations and the topics around our histories, but also to pick up the lessons that we could learn from that. So the way this series is going to be structured is we're going to be doing short series of subjects, 6 episodes, maybe 7 if we are gracious enough. And then we'll be talking about different subcontexts, and we'll start from the origins and sort of expand it outwards. And today, or the first episode, we are going to be talking about African civilizations from Kemet to the world. And when I was thinking about this topic, what was coming to my mind was just the phrasing of the title, from Kemet to the world, because really the world and civilization started from there, from Kemet, which is now called Egypt and, well, by extension, Africa. So I guess the first question is, give us a little bit of history and background, at least from your wide reading of some of these topics, how, what Kemet was and how we eventually came into Africa. So what are some of those early histories that we could begin from and then sort of pull it out from there?
Most certainly.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to point out is about this notion of the human race. Okay, it's a term that we all use, the human race. One, hue, the word hue, means color. Okay, so the human race, therefore, refers to us, Africans, people of color. Okay, so, and then human, very interesting term, because this is only one race of people. So you have the human race. There's actually only one race that's ever existed, okay? And that's been, biologically and phenotypically proven. And I'll call her Cousin Lucy is right here with us in Kenya. Okay, Cousin Lucy I'm referring to, is the skeletal remains of an African woman dating back, 1.8 million years, whatever. And it's been proven that we all have a genetic link. Okay, so one, we need to know, just starting out, that, and much of what I'm going to say today, and in general, is really pointed at the continental African community, not the diaspora, because many of the things, the diaspora has been much more, I would say, aware and involved in really getting their history, synthesizing it, collecting it, preserving it. But here, the history and culture has become allowed to be a non-entity, and we suffer for it. So this is really directed at the African continental community, those remarks I'm making, because one, I think if Africans here understood that the genesis of human life comes from Africa, and they hold it with a position that says, where to start.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Chinese, for example, that's about 6 years ago, major Chinese scientist headed a group of scientists in China to just with the purpose of looking at the genetic origins of the Chinese people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And much to his chagrin, and ultimately he admitted that it came from Africa,
Mm-hmm.
Just like the martial arts and so many things.
Mm-hmm.
So one, going back to the so-called human race, hue being those of color, and the other thing about the human race is like to be human is to be of color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so and this is not words that we made up. This is part of the English language.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so someone it's no accident that the term those terms were developed,
Mm-hmm.
and then to be human was meant to differentiate between so-called we'll call it Homo sapiens, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and others,
Mhm.
animal life, etc. What I find is that the way Africa is depicted, globally, Cousin Lucy gets very little play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When people come to Kenya, they ain't, which now, it's like, excuse me, but they should be looking for Cousin Lucy,
Mm-hmm.
because Cousin Lucy is our collective star. And they look for the beach, and they look for this, for the animals, and their notion of who the animals are. See, I find the beasts are the ones walking the street every day, driving, killing each other. I mean, 4,000 people. I came to Kenya and got the shock of my life, because they were talking about, we have a standing army because of Al-Shabaab and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. And okay. And then 4,000 people are being killed on the highway every year. Another 10,000 injured.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wait a minute. Who are the beasts?
Yeah, those are people on the roads or the ones in the bushes.
Who are the beasts? Because who's doing the killing? Because then you go to the park and you find the lions and all the other animals laid up, licking themselves, licking each other, relaxing on chill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But they're the beast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's what you should be afraid of. All right? And of course, animals, I did a major exhibition called Animals in African Art. I do exhibitions of traditional African sculpture. And the reason I chose the subject was because of the misnomers in terms of how Europeans see their relationship to the rest of how would I put it? The rest of that which God put on earth, meaning the trees,
Mm-hmm.
the bushes, the land, the environment, the animals. For them, it's always about dominance, and
Mm-hmm.
and you can look at their artwork and see. In fact, you look at. I've yet to see a traditional sculpture, and I've seen, I don't know, 20,000 pieces because I've done a major study.
Mm-hmm.
Where a traditional piece where the subject is an African man with his sword or his spear, and him taking down a lion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but in European art, and of course it happens,
Mm-hmm.
because the animals eat when they are hungry.
Yeah.
Humans kill for pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
But again, but the animals are the beast.
Mm-hmm.
I can't quite get to that idea. One of the things that troubles me, and I find quite comedic, is that when you look at European art, for example, you can go to anywhere in Europe, America, and I can guarantee you will see a sculpture of a European man on a big horse with his spear, his dagger, whatever, killing an animal. Most often the animal he's killing is not even from their region. Like they're killing something that don't even exist in their region. But that's their mentality of domination. One of the real things that's important for us as Africans is to remember and to be re-entrenched with information that reminds us of who we are. Yeah, the other day I was in Wote and a sister used we were talking about culture, and a sister used an expression, and I never heard it said this way. She said, "What's wrong with us? We've borrowed someone else's culture, and we're lost in it." And I'm like, "Ooh, that's deep," and it's true. I mean, we have, Malcolm X was once questioned about Africa and African culture, and someone said to him, "Well, Malcolm, what are we? We're here, we're African Americans, blah blah blah, and we're doing our thing. Why we have to worry about Africa? Why should Africa be someplace that we should consider and connect with and all that?" And Malcolm turned to him and said, "Listen, we lost our actual minds in Africa, meaning what we have been separated, not just physically, but spiritually, and also culturally from the essence of who we are." So he said, we lost our minds in Africa. That's what we lost. That's what was left. That's what we have to return. And right now, which is interesting, my feeling is that African Americans have, in general, and Africans in the diaspora. Colombia, I can take you throughout South America, particularly in Brazil, but throughout Latin America, South America, even Africans in other countries in Europe, they have tended to really cherish that which is lost and research it, develop it, and put it to use. Some years ago, an African scholar named Maulana Karenga, who happens to have, I think, 3 PhDs, he developed a system called Kwanzaa, as to celebrate African principles of life. And he did so in a manner and he reached back and used information regarding the cultural practices and celebrations of East Africa, particularly Tanzania. All right. And this was maybe 30 years ago now. And it was very important that he did so because it gave Africans in America and in the world an opportunity to celebrate as Africans, and to remember, Kusichakalia, to remember Umoja, to remember these things and remember about how to embrace them in their lives daily. The disappointment, for me was one of which is that you could to come to Kenya and no one has any clue about this system that was developed in America for African Americans, but spread globally, but here non-existent. So I'll get back to the subject of ancient now. but I want to deal with the human thing because that's a part of the real basis.
Yeah, sort of wrapping up on the basis.
The basis.
Yes.
That's the basis.
Uh-huh.
You know, so that eliminates the confusion. Plus, okay. So when, there's another thing that I want to point out. When, I mean, I can talk and speak about, and I will, ancient Kemet as specific, but we have to remember that as ancient as Kemet was, going 4,500 years before BC, there was Nubia. Okay, and actually the civilization of Nubia predated and presupposed and gave rise to what we know as ancient Kemet. Okay, and then prior to it, and the Nubians and the Kemites all looked to the physical south of the continent and they say in their own words that they were that their ideas or the German the seed of their societies, their ideas, their philosophies actually come from Central Africa. Okay, so we're talking millennium, and an example is the Ashango bone. Okay, now the Ashango bone is, I think, 10,000 years old. Now this is a bone which is basically a slide ruler. A slide ruler. Did I say slide ruler? Slide. What's that?
It's a ruler nonetheless.
But no, it's a not slide ruler. It's another term. Years ago, there used to be mathematical calculations that you would do on a
to measure distances.
Right.
So this was for the feet, if I remember correctly.
So this now, what I'm saying is the Shango bone was a means of doing significant mathematical calculations 10,000 years ago. Right. So when one of the things that troubles me most about being in Africa is that Africans have no sense generally of value of their own cultural historical experience. It's like, the white Jesus came and everything, just sprouted out the ground. And everything of their experience, their forefathers' experience, their ancestors' experience became muted totally. And when you look at there's so many things. For example, Africans were the first, were the first to produce high carbon steel 1,000 years before Europeans. Okay, I'll point to a particular book it's called Blacks in Science, Ancient and Modern. This book speaks, and this book is 20 years old. Okay, from Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, but it was the first brief composite piece that talked about the incredible things that Africans were doing in terms of building cities. Like, people have for example, here we are in Kenya. There's a historical location here called Narabatunga, which is an ancient city in Kenya. Kenyans don't know. Kenyans have no idea that there were cities. they think that, everyone was nomadic, and nomadic folks don't really
build anything.
No, there were ancient cities throughout Africa. Zimbabwe, the Great Zimbabwe, the Wall of Zimbabwe is considered one of architectural masterpieces, and it is I think proximity to the wall in China. Okay, now, so we've allowed Europeans to say that spacemen did it. You know what I'm saying? We allow ourselves to be punked out in the act, and we got all the degrees, but we have no courage. We have no knowledge of that which makes you president in the world. See, you get to be president in the world when you have a place of standing and that's not new cars. That's not degrees. That's not big houses.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about what makes you stand is when you have the knowledge and confidence as an individual and related to your cultural heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you know what makes Jews be able to do what they do? One, they had what they call was a Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had several Holocausts.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and our Holocaust didn't last for like 9 years,
Mm-hmm.
like the Jews. Ours has been continuous for 300, 400 years.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? Here we are, here we stand, but we have to appreciate who we are, who we came from, what we've done, and then from there you can build and guide and
Mm-hmm.
direct how you develop your nation, how you educate your children, how you have a civil society, how you don't have crime and corruption.
Mm-hmm.
See, there's a book here that talks about crime and corruption. It's called African Life and Customs. This book was by a brother named Edward Wilmot Blyden. This brother is so profound as a scholar, and reading his work, his major work, scared me.
Mm-hmm.
That's how bad this brother is. His linguistic vocabulary and knowledge was incredible. Anyway, let's tell you really quickly about
Mm-hmm.
this piece. In here, and in so many other written material by Europeans mainly,
Mm-hmm.
they talk about how honest Africans were.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to a young brother the other day, and who's one of my sons, and he couldn't believe it. He was like, really? Us? See, that should not be the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's documented. He talks here about how when Europeans first tried to put the Christian thing on us and their culture on us, how immediately we became weaker. Our children were weaker.
Mm-hmm.
Our homes became more in dissension issues,
Mm-hmm.
meaning cultural issues, and I'm talking about 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about the he was prominent from like 1880s through 1920s. He's one of the people who founded Liberia. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he documents even that far ago how detrimental it was for us to borrow someone else's culture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just to also mention his work, he wrote a book called Christianity, Islam, and the Negro Race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from the title itself, looks like something certainly should be read much deeper, because then that seems like really bring both major religions together and us as well. So I'm sort of bringing this towards a particular clause, tying back to the very initial concept of the human race and how, as a foundation for all of the other sort of episodes that are coming up, how that then becomes a key framework for which we as Africans, who are the people of color, who are the hue in the human race, how we begin to view ourselves. So
exactly.
I sort of want you to wrap up that concept, sort of tying back into the foundation from which we will sort of build on in the next sort of questions or episodes that follow. Yeah.
I will share with you man, God,
and civilization.
This is a foundation work by one of our foundation scholars, John G. Jackson. He and one other person I will mention were my favorite sources and most impressive scholars in early African history.
Mm-hmm.
He actually goes from man, which is funny, we were talking about human.
Yeah.
That's what he goes from. It goes from there in terms of he goes back, 40,000 years kind of thing, and comes forward. Asa Hilliard is also a great scholar who did major work in that area. So he talks about the development of early civilization, and not just our contributions, but actually how these principles were developed based on nature. Okay. One of the things that's so sad is now we see Europeans as the nature people. That is the craziest concept in the world. It is so adverse to the facts. You know what I'm saying? Now you talk about the Pocock, the Rendili, the Maasai. Those are nature people. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And I've held it for quite a long time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's so when you don't know, when you're blinded, you don't see nothing. And that's what I see. Folks here are just blinded on capitalism, on greed. You know what I'm saying? They don't see nothing. Meaning, it's in your face. You live with the Maasai. You know what I'm saying? They're not foreigners. These people, they're here. You can't see, and you know basically about the things that how they have conducted their lives for centuries, and how they have not brought damage to the environment, but you allow yourself to think that, and to be told that, when it comes to ecology, we're talking about the Swedish or the Norwegians or the
basically.
Hello. So going back, great. This is again one of the principal works. The other history I want to mention is the destruction of Black civilization. Because now we've come forward. We've come forward from the development of civilizations and down to their destruction. It's actually says called Great Issues of Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD. And this is by Dr. Chancellor Williams, Capricorn, I'm a Cap. And this brother, 2 series. This is a foundation work and when I went to the University of Nairobi here to met with the directors of their African Studies program. And they were very nice. They were very cordial. They were very greeting. But they never heard of him. They never heard of anybody that I know of. Even Maulana Karenga with his 3 PhDs. World-renowned. I'm talking about world-renowned African historians, scientists, Egyptologists, etc. I left there crying and saying to myself, physically crying, because I'm like, well, what can you teach the children if you don't even know about these people? Not even know their work. See, it's difference between
just knowing
somebody say, did you read this book? Did you know? You know what I'm trying to say? I'm saying that you don't even know that of the people who have set contemporarily and historically the foundation for your culture and history. So we got work to do.
We do, and hopefully through the next series of questions and sort of broad topics that we talk about, we'll probably begin to answer some of those. So sort of bring this to a wrap up. I think one of the things that really stands out as sort of foundational work to all of the initial questions that were asked really is this understanding that the human race, what we are right now, actually specifically mentions that it begins from the people of color. And so it's sort of a rallying call for us, who is the people of color, to actually embrace that history and embrace the strength that comes with that, so that as we present ourselves in the day-to-day operations in the world, that we actually operate as people who are the foundation for which everybody else sort of blossoms from. And sort of I'll end it at that, and
whose cultural products and creativity from the beginning set the foundation for the world's development.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone went to Kemet
Mm-hmm.
for an education.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Europeans used to lie about going to Kemet, meaning those who couldn't go would
Mm-hmm.
lie about the fact that they went there and sat at the knees of our ancestors
Mm-hmm.
for 10, 20 years. In Kemet, to become someone who was considered of high knowledge, a priest, you had to be able, you had to first become someone who was considered of ethics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the European system, ethics is a side course.
Yeah.
Like you take law
And ethics. On
and
the side.
ethics,
Yeah.
and you don't have to take ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently, because same thing with business,
Yeah.
ethics.
You gotta just do
You
business.
gotta do, here's business courses.
And this
You
is
can
ethics courses.
You can take ethics.
Mhm.
Now, in Kemet, you had to take ethics.
Yeah.
Meaning you had to become a priest before you were able to get the high knowledge of chemistry,
Mhm.
mathematics, astrology. You didn't get that. You didn't get exposed to it. And people, particularly the Greeks, there are numerous Greeks who are of a historical record
Mhm.
who went, stayed, and learned. And if you read what the Greeks say,
Mhm.
they give all honor to our ancestors
They do.
without contention.
Yeah.
In fact, they said that the sun itself rises on the Africans in Kemet. That these are the people of high morals, high culture, moral standard,
Mhm.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that those, again, who couldn't go and learn, they used to lie about it to say that they had. It's
Mhm.
like people you see wear Harvard t-shirts
Mhm.
that say Harvard sweatshirts and caps.
Yeah.
And
Just to confirm,
and
to
act
be
like
associated.
and act like they went to Harvard.
Mhm,
That's
mhm.
what Kemet was.
Yeah. Sort of. That is the next thing we'll sort of be talking about when moving to the next sort of series of questions, really. So, well, for a foundational episode, we call it episode 0. This was sort of very important that this was laid, so that when we begin to talk about all the rest, then we sort of have a good foundation.
Oh, I would say.
Yeah.
Alright, thanks for listening, and that's a wrap for this episode. For more exciting episodes like this, don't forget to follow our podcast, the Afropreneurs Podcast, on all streaming sites, and visit our website at www.ogwenostephen.com. See you on the next one.